Bernstein Show. Here's Ed.
When you Google my next guest, you read the words American Restaurateur. Not only is he an American restaurateur, but he is ours here in Las Vegas. It's Michael Morton. Michael, I've known you for a lot of years and been eating at your restaurants for, 30 or plus years. How long have you been in Vegas?
Well, we opened the first place here in May of 1995, 30 years ago.
Okay, that's a good guess. Right?
So you're right. You're right on. Yep.
Yeah, and you came from the restaurant business. I want to chat with you about that. I'm here today at Nudo, I should say that, which is your newest restaurant in Southern Highlands. And it's a must-go-to place, and it's a really incredible hotspot now in this part of town, particularly probably the hottest spot in Southern Highlands. But you got started in the restaurant business in Chicago. Your family was one of the most famous restaurant families anywhere in America, right? Can you talk about growing up like that?
Yeah, for better or worse, because you don't get to choose who the family you're born into. I'm a fourth generation restaurateur. My great-grandfather had a saloon in Iron Mountain, Michigan. And we actually have an old picture of it with just a horse tied out front. It says nickel beers, nickel shots. And my grandfather had the first restaurant called Morton's, which was not a steakhouse, in the south side of Chicago on the South Shore Drive. And my father, after coming back from World War II, started his own thing and wound up opening, well, after meeting Hugh Hefner, he's got a great story, and working for Playboy for 15 years, ventured off into the restaurant business himself and was ultimately best known for Morton's Steakhouse, where I worked as a kid, 10, 11 years old, all the way through college.
And you stayed with it. It must be part of your essence, it's in your heart, I guess. I grew up in the restaurant business, but my dad had a deli. So I remember slicing onions at 6 in the morning, and I said to myself, I better go to law school. but you grew up with a passion for it.
It's interesting. I don't even know that I really liked it, because it was kind of required of me, and I was kind of rebellious. My dad was a tough guy. This is a guy that went to, D-Day +2 and cleaned up American bodies for the first, 4 or 5 days in Normandy Beach. And when I came out of college, I was working for my dad, but I was kind of just going through through the motions, and I was like, this really isn't for me, and I wanted to go do my own thing, and I left my dad when I was 24 years old, and opened my first place in Chicago when I was 25, and I've been on my own ever since.
And it kind of a nightclub you opened up in Chicago, right?
The first one was called Voodoo. It was a little spot on the north side of Chicago on West George Street. And it only lasted about a year, and I definitely had more lessons learned in a failure of what not to do and then what to do. And I really learned, you gotta be downtown, you gotta be next to the busiest, most successful people there are. And that ultimately led me to do my next project, which was called Drink and Eat Too, eat in smaller letters. And that ultimately was the first place that we wound up opening here in May of '95. When I came out here with my brother on a trip, and there was no modern nightclubs here. There were a couple older spots here, and I knew that we were onto something really great, or it wasn't gonna work out so well. Obviously, we thought it would, and we did it.
Right. And when you talk about your brother, you're talking about Peter?
I am.
Yeah, your brother at that time was he started the Hard Rock Casino. And
he actually co-founded the first Hard Rock Cafe and was the co-owner with Isaac Tigert of the Hard Rock Cafes. They opened the first one in 1970 in London, England. He was there visiting my father, who was building the Playboy Club there at the time and couldn't get a hamburger. And that was kind of the genesis of the Hard Rock Cafe.
Yeah.
And then, fast forward, bunch of years, I was looking to do a second drink location. And I asked Peter, hey, can I come out and stay with you and look at some locations for drink? And I was used to Chicago where people could stay out till 5 o'clock in the morning and there's taxis everywhere. I was kind of like, didn't really get the LA thing and, thought that wasn't for us. He said, hey, he was building the Hard Rock Hotel and Casino at the time. This is probably late 93. And he said, why don't you jump on the plane with me? Let's come out and I'll show you some locations. And where we actually did drink was one of the locations he had looked at for the Hard Rock Cafe, which ultimately was not there. It was at Harmon and Koval, where we bought that corner and built that building, which is now, interestingly, where the F1 paddock is. Right. And it was like a lifetime ago now,
Right. And you've been through a lot of various enterprises since then. But currently, and we'll get to Nudo in a minute, okay. Currently you still have at what used to be the Hard Rock is now the Virgin Hotel, and you have the One Steakhouse there.
Yes.
Fantastic steakhouse.
Thank you.
Presented that on our show a few years ago. You have a very niche business at the Wynn, right?
Yep.
Le Cave, and that's a different kind of. How do you describe that?
Well, we describe it as American small plates, and it's such an honor to be at the Wynn. Steve really let me be the first tenant there, and hard to believe we've been there for 15 years. Wow. So we've expanded, and actually this past August we completely redid Le Cave into its next kind of iteration. We moved the bar from the main dining room out into the terrace and lounge area now that we expanded it. Mm-hmm. All new furniture package and just redid everything. Where the old bar was actually now is all glass, and you get a beautiful view at the Sphere. And so it's been, but it's an American small plates concept, very reasonably, priced.
Compared to tapas, which would be in Spanish.
It's more Spanish. We say American because everything is migrated here. Right. And, whether it's sashimi or Italian or anything else. So it's a nice mix, but it is small plates. Yeah,
for sure. Did I miss something? What else did I miss?
We have Crush. At the MGM Grand.
About Crush, yes.
Which hard to believe too. We were just chatting about it. We opened that in 2013, so that's been 12 years. And, it's great being at the MGM Grand.
Right, and of course you had the Mexican restaurant, La Comida, downtown, which recently you just sold.
Yes.
You talked about something interesting. You talked about when something goes wrong and what you learn from it. You've had some incredible successes, a couple, less than successful ventures. Do you feel like that it's been the less successful ones at the time? It's really hard and difficult to deal with those issues, but they're ultimately what really set you free?
I think it's a combination of things, and maybe I misspoke. When I said the first place I did in Chicago was a failure, it failed if the primary objective of any business is to make money. It did not work on that sense. But if it wasn't for that failure, we can call it a failure, I wouldn't have learned those critical lessons. So, the challenging ones, they're not all the same, right? The constellations will line up for you to be the right concept in the right space at the right time. It just seems to really work. And that still will require as much work as any of the other ones. But one of the things I've really prided ourselves on is all of our restaurants have really worked in this town. So, before I sold the 9 Group at the Palms, that was
we forgot to talk about that. Because when the Palms Hotel opened up, it was the hotel in town at that time. You had several businesses there. You had 9. You had the club there, right? Nightclub.
We had 9 Steakhouse. So in the first tower was 9 Steakhouse, Rain Nightclub, and Ghost Bar, which changed
all
the town.
Visionary, right? All 3 of them.
They really changed the town.
Yeah.
And it was great because you can go to the steakhouse and then go upstairs to Ghost Bar and have an after dinner drink, relax a little bit, hang out, and then go to the club till, the wee hours. And then in the Fantasy Tower, we had 3 places there, which were Nudo Italiano, my first Italian restaurant, the Playboy Club that we did in partnership with the Palms and the Maloofs. Mm-hmm. They were all in partnerships with the Maloofs, but the Maloofs ran the gaming in that space, of course. And then Moon Nightclub above it. Remember, we had the whole roof retracted, and we ran the Palm Pool too, the Palm Pool and
I remember how innovative Rain was at that time. It really set the bar for clubs to come in Vegas.
It really did. You know, I was lucky enough that it was at Drink here in Las Vegas that George Maloof was hanging out, that we got an opportunity to meet him. And little did I know, because I'm a kid from Chicago, I was in my 20s at the time, that if it works, the casinos are going to want it. And when we Drink, when it had a line around the building, you would see limos from Caesars and from every casino. And little did I know, 2 or 3 years later, one by one, they would do it. We got very lucky that we could do something with the Maloofs, which really had an incredible run in its heyday.
So you've had these incredible experiences on the Strip, in major hotels, in very famous, monumental, institutions like the Wynn, like the Palms, like the Virgin, like MGM. Now here we are in Southern Highlands. Why Southern Highlands?
You know, I think things usually come full circle. And, this is the first probably neighborhood place. Drink started out with locals and became a lot of tourists. But that was in the resort corridor, Virgin's in the resort corridor. I haven't done a neighborhood place ever in the 30 years I've been here. I mean, really in the neighborhood. And this is how I started doing it, whether it was my first place called Voodoo in Chicago or Drink in Chicago. And, we were originally looking for something in Summerlin. And, my real estate guy called and said, hey, I found this building in Southern Highlands. I was like, interesting. I'm not, wasn't really thinking about it. So let me take a look. And as soon as we came out and looked at this building, it was a great building. And of course, we started digging in and doing our homework. And this actually, to tie this back to Drink, I said to myself, why are there no nightclubs here, or virtually no nightclubs here? And the same thing was for Southern Highlands. Why are there virtually no restaurants in Southern Highlands? And I had known of the few places that were up here. I had a lot of employees that have lived up here and friends for a long time, because it seems that people come to Southern Highlands, they never leave. It's an amazing community. But there was really a restaurant void. And as we got more excited about it, we actually bought the building. And here we are. So it's wonderful, because being on the Strip for so long too, you don't really get to know your customers as well, of course, because a lot of them are tourists. And we have people that come regularly, once or twice or even 3 times a year or every other year. But it's just been amazing to be here. Either myself or Jenna, my wife, has been here every night since we've opened.
And your partner?
My partner, Jenna. My better half, for sure. Yeah.
And, okay, so you decided to go Italian. Why?
It's my favorite food. This is what, I wanted to actually do this concept originally. I was going to do it in the Arts District, where we have our office building down there. So we worked on this for quite some time. And to me, and maybe it's just my taste, and I try not to have things just based on my taste, I always say, because otherwise I'll probably go out of business. But I think this is food you can eat every day. I've literally been eating this every day for the past 2.5 weeks as of this taping. It's great, it's fresh. All of our pastas are made, in-house. All of our breads are made in-house, our doughs. And when you eat fresh-made pasta, it's not like eating pasta that you buy, out of store, that starchy, kind of heavy feeling. And you feel light, and it's fresh, and it's healthy, and it's tasty. So I just don't think you can go wrong with great Italian food.
Let's talk about some of your favorite dishes here. I know that you enjoy calamari.
I do.
And you feature that on the menu?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. We have, really at our heart of our menu, and people come in and they ask me, and I always say, it sounds like such a pat answer. Oh, what do you really like? I'm like, it's all really good. But the pizzas and pastas, I think, are really the anchors of the menu. And we bought this incredible pizza oven from Italy. So there is a UNESCO World Heritage way to make Neapolitan pizza. And it's got to be the right temperature, it has to be the right style of oven, it has to be, wood burning. And so we have this incredible pizza oven, and this, this homemade bread. We make focaccia every day, our pastas every day. So that to me is kind of the anchor of what it is. But we've got great bistecca and chicken. Our pollo francese is actually, we're doing a photo shoot with that today on some of our dishes. Great fresh salads and
fish.
And our bronzino people have really been enjoying. And I don't know if you picked up on the word nudo. Nudo in Italian means naked. And I've got a good friend of mine from Calabrese. who helped me name the restaurant. And it's not necessarily about being naked, but it's about less is more. Right. And just fresher ingredients, less preparation, and simple and fresh. I think wins.
When you watch these shows on TV, like Stanley Tucci or one of those shows, and they go through Italy, and they go to these little towns, these little farms, and the food is so incredible, but it's always because they're fresh, simple ingredients that they're putting in the meals.
It is. That reminds me of an old story. Before we did Nudo Italiano, we went over with our designers and our chefs over to Italy. This is, 2004, 05. And I was in Rome, and we were talking to these restaurateurs there. And Rome has one of the most antiquated distribution systems in the world for a big city. So everything you eat in Rome really comes from a 20-mile circle, right? With all the modern things, everything's fresh, everything's local. But I think the big thing that we try to do differently here is that in America, for the most part, you get American Italian. You get these big, dishes with these heavy, lots of sauce, these giant portions, these, meatballs the size of my fist, and that there's a place for that, and those work. Obviously, there are a lot of them, but we try to be more authentic here. They have an expression in Italy that they dress the noodle. So when you're done eating the pasta in Italy, there's not a soup or a sauce left in your bowl. Mm-hmm. And it was a great education doing it, and it's fun to do this again. More neighborhood, more neighborly. The Palms was a really high-end, Nudo Italiano, the Palms was a high-end Italian restaurant. I think here, and thank you for your early support, it's been great to see you here a couple times. I would say maybe, I don't know, I have to look at the menu, half our dishes are under $20. And they're really approachable.
Yeah, reasonable menu, right? I mean, when you look at the menu, it's a great variety, and the prices are reasonable, and the environment is just super. Just super. I mean,
Why is it that you have to make a choice when you go out and eat? That says a lot of times. Do I want good food, or a good vibe, or a good scene? Those shouldn't have to be.
At all, right?
Those shouldn't have to be mutually exclusive, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's our job to do it all, and I think, humbly, that we've done a good job of that here. We probably spend too much money. It's probably one of my faults. I spend too much money to open these places. But you get one chance to build it for the life of the business.
Right.
So you better do it right.
First impressions.
You better do it right. So we hope people think we did it right when they come here.
You mentioned the pizza oven. The most important part of serving pizza is the oven you're using, correct? I mean, it's even more important than the dough and the sauce.
Well, I would say the proofing of it might be just as important too. And so we spent a lot of money on this baking oven or proofing oven that adds moisture back into the dough. A lot of the breads that you'll find aren't good here in Las Vegas because of how dry it is and because of the altitude. That's why it seems that breads are better on the coast at sea level and with more moisture.
Humidity.
With humidity, yeah. So we have an oven that actually incorporates that moisture into it, which I think makes a big difference. I don't know if you've tried our focaccia.
I absolutely have.
And it's
fantastic.
really...
And so is the pizza.
Thank you. And we're new and we're working hard and trying to get better every day,
Okay, so we're going to talk about show some of the dishes you have here. So the calamari, how's that prepared?
The calamari is fried, but more lightly, and with peppercini and cherry peppers and a couple dipping sauces. It's really, really good. Randomly we're also doing a photo shoot here kind of behind us. One of the things that we're making today are our baked clams. And it's hard to find a really good baked clam, and these clams come out so hot in this kind of in this dish that we have. It's just people have really been enjoying them. And when Italians tell me they enjoy them, that's better. That's better yet. Yeah. We're doing a big pizza shoot today too, so we're literally doing all of our pizzas. We have we kind of have everything. We have a great vegetarian pizza like Jenna will eat. Mm-hmm. We have the Diavola, the spicy salami pizza, pepperoni pizza, the prosciutto di Parma pizza, a mushroom pizza. So, and we mix them up with nice different, there's 3 or 4 different cheeses that we use on them, and so they're not all the same kind of base.
By the way, can I call and order a pizza and pick it up here?
You sure can.
Okay.
You sure can. We're actually going to do delivery, but we want to make sure that we can take care of the people that come to the restaurant first, as we're so new. But we've started pickups, and I would say in a couple more weeks we'll be doing delivery as well.
Fantastic.
Via the website, yeah.
And the chicken, the pollo.
The pollo francese, I kind of, our chef is Chef Billy. He's an Italian from New York, which of course is great.
And he's been your chef for
15 years,
while, right?
Since we've opened Le Cave at the Wynn. And so to have an Italian guy that grew up in an Italian family with the food culture that Italian families have has been wonderful. And we've been cooking this, as I said, for probably too long, working on this concept for a while. But I debated the pollo francese before I tasted it. I said, "Are you sure?" And I hit him with some, and it's Billy and I that do the menus. And as soon as he made it for me the first time, it's great because it's really lightly battered and just lightly sautéed with like a lemon butter sauce. It's really nice, a little side of linguine.
And I should mention the veal also, because I tasted it here. Delicious.
Thank you. The veal piccata.
Yes.
Really, really, really nice dish. And again, we're trying to use really good ingredients. It's one of my favorite entrees.
So, a couple of weeks into being here at Nudo in Southern Highlands, where do you see this restaurant in 3-4 years from now?
I really hope this is just. It feels like what we've started to see is people already coming back after 2.5 weeks and seeing people 2 or 3 times. But we just want to be their neighborhood Italian restaurant, and we're, with all the new things of technology and so forth, maybe I got it from my dad. We like to recognize people, know where they like to sit, know where they like to drink, and just welcome them and recognize them. And, have this be just a nice place that they can come out, and we're a big believer in people should be well taken care of, especially from a value standpoint for spending their hard-earned money. And want to take a little break and not have to cook or clean or do whatever, that they come to the restaurant.
What was the biggest lesson that you learned from your dad?
Probably the thing I quote the most is that this business is 90% common sense, 10% a good eye. So I think I've been blessed with both of those pretty well. It's probably my ADD that gets me on always looking around and looking for things. No, but for my dad, it was also great value. Great value. I remember in the late 1970s, early 1980s, and I was a 15-year-old or whatever, people used to say, "Arnie, you can't make money having a 50% food cost on a steak." He said, "Yes, I can, because I'm going to put more people through the restaurant than my competitors." And so, my dad, again, being one of those kind of, World War II vets and, the greatest generation, he didn't give that much advice. I think it was more about how he just lived his life, and he had great integrity, and he worked hard, and he loved this business more than anything. More than I do, that's for sure. I mean, he loved to work, just loved to work.
And you look at, your dad's been gone for how long?
It was 20 years last week.
20 years.
Yeah.
And so when you drive by a Morton's, what kind of feeling do you have?
Well, it's so cool to see that name still there and that brand still there and that place that I can identify with as a child. But my dad sold it, I think, in 1989 or 1990. So a lot of people think we still own it today. It's been sold 3 or 4 times. But it's just amazing that it opened in 78. So it's been, 40 years, 45 years, whatever, of seeing that name still around and reminding me of my dad, my dear old dad. I say he's running the best restaurant or the best steakhouse in heaven, So, and that was his baby. That was his baby.
So when you offer, you have a steakhouse over at the Virgin, and you have steak on the menu here?
We do. We have one steak.
One steak.
Yes.
So you have a tradition to live up to when it comes to serving steak, right? Does that put a lot of pressure on you?
I've done this for a while. Remember, I had 9 steakhouses in Chicago 25 years ago that, George Maloof liked, and we wound up doing that as part of what we talked about at the Palms. And so, I feel like as I become my own man, the pressure is kind of off. And we know good quality. We like what we do. We know the kind of steaks that we like to serve and so forth. So, I think as you get older, you get more comfortable in your own skin.
Yeah. What's your favorite cut of steak?
I eat really healthy. And so a lot of people say, filet, how could you like filet? But I like the bone in filet. Right. It's tender, and near the bone you get a lot of flavor, and it's still healthy. It makes me, makes you feel better about eating something that's leaner. But I think all the old school standbys, like my dad was a New York strip guy too, and I still love a good New York strip.
Yeah. And what's your favorite pizza?
I like spicy. So the Diavola I like a lot. I also just like the margarita. I like simple things a lot. And I like the margarita with the basil oil drizzle that we do on it. It's just fresh and light. You feel good when it's done. These pizzas don't have much cheese on them. They're very thin. Right. So it makes you feel better about eating this kind of food. It does.
Pizza's not all that unhealthy, is it? No,
it's not.
It's pretty good for you, I think.
It's not. I mean, as long as you're not eating like, deep dish, like some of the stuff I could tell you from Chicago back in the day was not, the most healthy pizza. But
yeah, you didn't take that out of Chicago, right?
No.
You left it there.
Yeah, exactly. Although I used to have them shipped here frozen for a long time.
Okay. Old habits are hard to break, right?
Yeah. Well, my kids grew up on that, so I always had those in the freezer.
Yeah. So Nudo is over here on Cactus and
Cactus and Arville.
This is Cactus and Arville. So a lot of people aren't familiar. I live in Southern Highlands, so I remember when we didn't have a Cactus exit, and I remember we didn't have a Star exit, and you had to get off at Silverado and Frank Sinatra, or take these D. Martin, whatever these others, take one of these other streets.
Yeah.
But now you get off the freeway at the Cactus exit, you make a right, and you go a mile down the street on the right-hand side, and you hit Arville, and there you are.
Yeah,
easy to find.
I was saying I live up in Summerlin.
Yeah.
And once I'm out of kind of my gates, I'm here in 15, 18 minutes, and that's a great thing about our town too, right? We're not sitting in traffic for 2 hours, but we're just one kind of super block down from Decatur and Cactus, which is kind of that mouth entryway to Southern Highlands. And love the neighborhood, and love the people that have been coming here. Great tight community.
Well, we in Southern Highlands love it. We have this great new restaurant called Nudo, and so hey, go get nude. Thank you.
Thank
Michael.
you. I really appreciate it.
Week.